Chosen one, you didn't just survive, you evolved. Let's be clear. You're not crazy, you're just clear now. And that clarity, it's got people shifting in their seats, second-guessing their games, and whispering behind your back because they know you see too much to ever be played again. This isn't your typical pep talk. This is for the ones who used to doubt themselves, who swallowed their instincts to make others comfortable. The ones who were always too emotional, too intense, or too deep for people who couldn't handle truth in raw form. But look at you now, reading between the lines, hearing what's not said, feeling the lie before it hits the air. Your intuition isn't just a vibe, it's your superpower. And baby, it's fully activated. People don't know how to approach you anymore because they can't mask their energy like they used to. You don't need proof. You feel patterns, motives, shifts. You've become unbribable, unshakable, and unreadable to anyone who operates in illusion. So if they say, "You've changed," good. That's not an insult. That's confirmation. In this journey, we're not just talking about intuition. We're reclaiming it, honoring it, owning it as the divine compass it is. Because once you trust your inner world more than anyone's outside opinion, you become unstoppable. Let's get into it. Let's name what they tried to bury. Let's unlock what your soul has known all along. Because this is not just a conversation. This is a homecoming for your spirit, looking for purpose and peace. Hit subscribe and start the journey. They were never afraid of what you said out loud. They were afraid of what you could sense without a word. What you carry isn't just awareness. It's an internal compass, wired to detect what others work hard to bury. You didn't earn this gift through studying. Life handed it to you through fire, and now it moves through you like second nature, drawing out the very truths people try to mask behind polished smiles and rehearsed lines. You don't search for dishonesty. It stumbles over itself in your presence. The energy shifts when you enter a space, not because you're loud or forceful, but because something in you quietly interrupts the performance. People start double-checking their stories, watching their phrasing, altering their tone. Not because you've confronted them, but because your silence feels like it's already seen everything. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. You track more than words. You notice the pauses, the glances that linger too long. The subtle hesitation before a lie is dressed in charm. And you catch it, not with effort, but with instinct. It's not a suspicion. It's not paranoia. It's precision, born from experience. That's what unsettles them. The way you can hear between the lines, feel what's left unsaid, and still remain composed. You don't accuse. You don't react. You just know. And that knowing disrupts whatever game was being played. They'll say, "You're imagining things," because denial is easier than exposure. But deep down, they know you've already clocked the inconsistency, mapped the motive, marked the deception. They feel it when they look at you, like they've just been scanned and filed away, because they have. You're not watching with eyes. You're reading with something deeper, something ancient. And that presence makes people fumble, even when you're silent. You've become a living reminder that some truths cannot be silenced, and some eyes cannot be fooled. You didn't have to call them out. The unease they feel when you're near does it for you. You didn't say it, but they heard it anyway. They think you're over-analyzing, when in reality, you're decoding patterns in real time. You're not guessing. You're tapping into a flow of insight that others have been trying to reach through tactics and pretense. While they fumble with strategies and manipulation, you're tuning into a current they can't fake or access without integrity. What pulses through you isn't guesswork, it's connection, a direct channel to something wider, older, and far more precise than logic alone. You don't chase answers, they arrive, fully formed, delivered through instinct, sharpened by experience. The reason people shift when you're near isn't because you confront them, it's because they feel the atmosphere change before you even speak. Feel God's love stirring within you. Don't let it stop there. Hit the super thank you button and sow a seed of $20 or more. That simple act can ignite hope, heal hearts, and carry His love further than you imagine. You were made to shine His light. This is your moment. Be the miracle someone's been praying for. Let heaven move through you. You notice patterns before they complete. You recognize intentions before they're announced. It's not about reading people, it's about catching vibrations before they manifest. You're not emotionally reactive, you're energetically responsive. There's a difference, and that difference makes people uneasy. You don't wait for the mask to fall. You feel the fracture in the character behind it. Your sensing is not rooted in fear, it's woven into your design. This kind of clarity doesn't come from training. It comes from being cracked open enough to never unsee again. It's ancient recognition, waking up inside you. It's remembering what others are still trying to understand. They're still trying to decode your confidence, not realizing it comes from listening inward, not looking outward. You don't predict, you receive. It's not magic, it's alignment. You pull truth from places they've never explored, and that unnerves those still performing honesty. You're not here to be impressed, you're here to discern. And while they're rehearsing roles, your presence reminds them that nothing rehearsed can stand next to something real. Some people live inside stories that haven't happened yet, but you feel the shifts before the script is even written. Your instincts don't wait for facts to validate them. They move ahead, catching signals most people mistake as noise. Others rely on hindsight. You navigate with foresight. You don't need an incident to confirm what your body already knows. Your distance isn't coldness, it's preparation, it's preservation. You sense the imbalance before it tips, the betrayal before it's spoken, the exit before the door creaks open. And when you pull away from someone suddenly, it's not impulse, it's inner clarity at full volume. People get uncomfortable with what they can't deceive. Your inner radar doesn't react to charm or surface warmth. It picks up what lingers beneath, what's hidden behind timing, what's dressed as kindness, but walks like calculation. That's why they label you as distant, or intense, or unapproachable. Because you don't just witness behavior, you trace the intent stitched into it. You've felt storms forming in silence, tension, gathering in laughter, that pressure in the room before anyone says a word. It's real. And you've learned not to wait for lightning to prove the forecast. You walk away before the sky opens. They don't realize that your refusal to engage isn't passive. It's prophetic. You're not emotional. You're informed by something deeper than words. That twitch in your stomach, that shift in your chest, that's not anxiety. That's recognition. And when you stop giving people the benefit of the doubt, they call it change. But what's really changed is your tolerance for pretending. You no longer need the crash to prove the brakes were faulty. You sense the curve before the road bends. You don't live in fear. You live in frequency. And that frequency has saved you more times than logic ever could. Step beyond the screen. Join. And help light the way for others. They thought they still had the upper hand until their performance stopped working. You didn't argue. You didn't accuse. You just stopped reacting. And that was enough to send them spiraling. Their usual tricks? Ineffective. Their rehearsed charm? Dull. Because now, you don't get hooked on words. You catch the current running underneath them. What used to confuse you now confirms everything. You've stepped into a level of clarity where the truth doesn't need proof. It simply reveals itself in real time. They don't understand how you know, but they feel it. And that's what unnerves them most. The quiet, piercing awareness that doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, doesn't need validation. You've refined your silence into a language they don't speak. The way you pause instead of plead, the way you stare instead of stumble. It throws them off completely. They relied on your reactions to maintain control. But now, your stillness exposes what their words try to conceal. It's not that you're colder now, it's that you're sharper. You've trained your attention to track intention. You no longer ask for the truth. You extract it from their patterns, and they can feel it. That knowing in your presence, that invisible mirror reflecting everything they're trying to hide, leaves them scrambling for footing. They used to provoke you to distort your image, but you stopped handing them the script. You let them talk, and in doing so, you let them reveal everything they didn't intend to. You're not loud, but you're disruptive, because in your presence, dishonesty can't breathe. That's what changed. Not just your awareness, but your relationship with it. You no longer explain your insight, you honor it. You don't need an apology or admission. You already understand what they were trying to keep from you. And that understanding, that calm, unwavering sense of what's real, that's what turns manipulators into shadows around you. Feel God's love stirring within you. Don't let it stop there. Hit the super thank you button and sow a seed of $20 or more. That simple act can ignite hope, heal hearts, and carry His love further than you imagine. You are made to shine His light. This is your moment. Be the miracle someone's been praying for. Let heaven move through you. You've stopped being fooled by presentation, because now you feel people's truth long before they finish their sentence. It's not a guess. It's a response to the vibration beneath their voice, the one that doesn't lie, even when their words do. What's different now isn't them. It's that you no longer second-guess the information your spirit picks up. Their posture shifts, and you register hesitation. Their laughter wavers, and you detect tension. Their eyes flicker, and your whole body knows this isn't connection, it's calculation. And they feel it too. That unsettling sense that they've been read, not heard. You don't need to confront them. Your withdrawal says more than confrontation ever could. You shift your energy, and suddenly, their comfort vanishes. They start questioning themselves because they can't understand what gave them away. They think it was a phrase, but it wasn't. It was the motive wrapped around the phrase. That's your gift. You listen beyond the words. You catch the layers. You know when someone's care is conditional. You feel when concern is a cover for control. And once you've sensed it, no amount of explaining can erase it. You've stopped assuming the best just to be polite. You've stopped offering benefit of the doubt when your body says otherwise. You let your spirit file the moment and move accordingly. And that, more than anything, terrifies those who hide behind charm. It's not your presence that threatens them. It's your discernment. It's the fact that they can no longer manipulate the image you hold of them. Because you're not waiting to be told who they are. You already know. And nothing they say can make you unknow it. They used to have you figured out. Or so they thought. Carefully rehearsed lines, perfectly timed expressions, all tailored to keep you compliant. It used to work. You used to pause, to consider, to question yourself. But now, something has shifted. You're no longer reacting on cue. and it's throwing their entire act into chaos. Their confidence crumbles before the conversation even starts. They step into the moment expecting to lead it, only to find you've already dismantled their angle in your silence. You don't play along anymore. You don't validate the script they spent so long preparing. You redirect the scene with nothing but presence. Their rhythm collapses before they can deliver the first beat. What they plan to control is now unpredictable. You answer with questions they didn't rehearse for. You give no emotional cues to work with. You sense the motive before the words form. And what's worse, you don't expose it. You simply disengage. You don't need to prove you're right. Your energy already spoke volumes. They used to thrive on being one step ahead. Now, they're struggling to keep up. You're dismantling their strategy mid-move, without resistance, without apology. You are no longer the soft target they once relied on. They can feel the tension rising behind their own masks when you don't flinch, don't fumble, don't feed the performance. This isn't about catching lies. It's about making illusions irrelevant. When they realize their tools don't work anymore, when charm doesn't influence and guilt doesn't land, they panic. They've lost control of the narrative because the version of you they manipulated no longer exists, and they're not prepared for the one that's replaced it. The moment you stopped shrinking, they started calling you unstable. That's how it works. When they can no longer pull your strings, they try to paint you as broken. They used to love you quiet, agreeable, easy to steer. You fit the mold they needed, kind but passive, wise but obedient, spiritual but silent. But you don't fit anymore. Now that you've reclaimed your intuition, they're unsettled. You aren't asking for permission to see clearly. You aren't second-guessing what your spirit already confirms. That unnerves people who depended on your confusion to keep control. You're not lashing out. You're just no longer available to manipulation. And that, to them, looks like rebellion. They've rewritten your clarity as chaos because it no longer benefits them. The labels come fast, irrational, emotional, paranoid. But they're not naming you. They're naming their fear, because when you stop performing the role they assigned you, they lose the ability to shape the story. You've changed, and not in the way they celebrate. You've changed in the way that makes them rethink every moment they underestimated you. Your refusal to be passive has become power, and they can't unsee it. Now, when you speak, they listen, not because they respect it, but because they're watching what they can't control. You don't owe them the comfort of your confusion. You've outgrown the version of yourself that made them comfortable. Let them talk. Let them scramble. Their narrative is noise. Your clarity is the confirmation. You're not unwell. You're unbound. And they've never seen you so steady. They aren't unnerved by your presence because of what you say. They're shaken by what you silently reflect. You don't confront with volume. You disrupt with awareness. Your energy is a mirror so clean, so raw, that when others come near, they suddenly catch glimpses of the truth they've buried under years of avoidance. You walk in, and the air shifts. Conversations stall. Eyes drift. Tension surfaces out of nowhere. It's not because you're aggressive or judgmental, it's because your frequency presses on the parts of them they don't want to feel. You don't expose people with words. Your alignment exposes them without trying. People start explaining themselves before you ask anything. They laugh too loud, blink too much, or grow unusually quiet. It's not performance anxiety, it's exposure panic. You hold no grudge, yet they feel defensive. Not because you accuse them, but because your insight reveals what their persona worked hard to bury. You've become the reflection no one requested, but suddenly can't ignore. The version of themselves they hide from shows up uninvited in your presence. That's not your doing, it's the nature of light. When you're walking in inner truth, anything false around you becomes visible by default. So, when you trigger discomfort, it's not rebellion, it's recognition. Their unresolved patterns start rattling under your calm gaze. And while they might try to frame your intensity as judgment, what they're really battling is their own shadow being stirred awake. You never needed to preach. You never had to prove anything. You just held your ground, and that was enough. Because the closer someone is to illusion, the more threatened they are by someone who doesn't need to wear one. You no longer fall for charm wrapped in convenience. What you once dismissed as just a vibe now registers as a full message. Before they even speak, you catch the tension in the air, the static from intentions wrapped in polish, that nervous glance, that false concern. You decode it before they've formed the sentence. What used to confuse you now translates with brutal clarity. You don't need explanations anymore. The moment someone's energy shifts, your internal compass locks in. You feel the mismatch, not in your head, in your whole being. And once it lands, you act. No hesitation, no need for confirmation. The room speaks to you differently now. Where others hear silence, you pick up undertones, unseen tensions, emotional residue. What people try to hide behind gestures and language, you catch through subtle frequencies. Not because you're digging, because your awareness no longer filters itself to be polite. That's why they grow uneasy. You're not suspicious, you're discerning. And that difference terrifies anyone trying to slide something past you. You respond with a calm that reads as confrontation because it can't be manipulated. That smile they practiced, it falls flat. That carefully worded message, it lands wrong. They try to figure out how you see through them. But they don't realize you're not watching. You're attuning. You're not searching for lies. You're registering the fracture between message and motive. And when there's a crack, you step back, quietly, clearly, without offering space for correction. You're not trying to catch anyone slipping. You're just too in tune to miss it when they do. And that's what sets people off. The realization that you're no longer someone they can manage with charm. You're someone who hears what isn't said, sees what's hidden, and walks away without needing to explain why. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. They aren't whispering because you're loud. They're whispering because you've begun to see what others have spent their lives ignoring. You're not content with surface-level truths. You've started tracing patterns, unraveling stories, and pulling threads that were never meant to be touched. What you notice isn't just behavior, it's lineage. It's the origin of habits passed off as culture. It's the motives masked as care. And that kind of vision? It shakes more than people. It threatens systems. You no longer stop at the what. You dive straight into the why. The invisible agreements, the unspoken laws, the legacy of silence. You catch it all. While others are still playing their roles, you're questioning the script. The things people brushed off as just how it is, you now recognize as conditioning cloaked in ritual. What they once called loyalty, you now see as fear. What they called tradition, you've realized was suppression. You speak without accusation, yet your presence is confrontational to denial. And that's why people start to murmur, not because you've said too much, but because you've seen too clearly. You didn't ask to be the one to expose what's hidden, but now that you do, they can't unknow it. Your clarity becomes contagious. You don't aim to shame, you aim to free. And that threatens those who built their safety on secrecy. Your awareness doesn't just name dysfunction, it breaks its camouflage. The quiet spaces you enter begin to quake, not because you're breaking things, but because you're revealing what's been broken all along. The whispers are a sign. You're no longer ignored, you're felt, and the very systems that relied on your silence now feel the heat of your awareness rising. There's a reason their tactics no longer work. You've become unshakable, where you once were soft. Not out of bitterness, but from finally learning what your peace costs. They used to know how to bend your boundaries with charm, soften your clarity with sweet timing, and pull you back into confusion with rehearsed apologies. But those tricks lost power when your discernment grew sharper than their strategy. You stopped being swayed by words and started watching patterns like a mathematician solving for X. What was once a tempting offer now reads like emotional bait. What once pulled at your empathy now rings like a siren, warning you to keep your distance. They haven't changed their tactics. You've just stopped letting them work. There is no reaction anymore, no tug of war, just stillness. Stillness that says, I see you, and I'm no longer accessible. You didn't get colder, you got clear. And to those who rely on confusion, clarity feels like ice. They mistake your peace for arrogance. They confuse your silence for spite. But in truth, you simply detached from the illusion. They try to circle back with new versions of the same mask, forgetting you've already studied every angle. They don't understand that your intuition doesn't need a second round. One read was enough. Now you recognize the echo before it even enters the room. What unsettles them isn't that you left. It's that they can no longer lure you back. The emotional doorway they used to walk through. It's gone, not locked, dismantled. And no amount of sugarcoating can reconstruct it. You didn't harden, you healed. And now, nothing manufactured can pass your internal gatekeeper. You're not rude. You're just untouchable where it matters most. That's what unsettles the ones who used to depend on your confusion. That's what they can't manipulate anymore. A spirit that finally knows its worth. They expected to keep your mind busy with noise so you'd never hear your own wisdom rising. They weren't ready for the version of you that could hear through chaos, that could separate signal from static. For so long, their voices played the loudest in your head, guiding your decisions, shaping your worth, convincing you to doubt what you knew deep down. But that era is over.